Scott Berry of Southern Miss. Coach, thank you so much for joining us. I want to start with just a quick congratulations, another series win for you and your bunch. Friday didn't go particularly well for your team. How should I phrase this? What is it like after a Friday night loss, and what do you do and say to your team to get them to bounce back as well as they did Saturday and Sunday to win the series?
Well, basically, when you lose that Friday night, obviously you're behind already, and only one more loss and you lose the series, so your back's against the wall. And we kind of give the example a lot of boxing, in all honesty, Michael, and just being on the ropes and bringing the fight back into the middle of the ring. And certainly that was the challenge after Friday night's loss, that we need to get it back in the middle of the ring and put them on the ropes and even this thing so that we have a chance to win the series on Sunday. But, we fell behind both Friday and Saturday 2-0 in both those games in the top of the first before we even stepped to the plate. So, being able to overcome that on Saturday and not being able to really overcome it on Friday was the difference of the mentality that our guys had, and to play more of a competitive game. Not that we didn't compete on Friday. And in all honesty, we just missed on some opportunities. And Valparaiso, who a lot of people probably say, who's Valparaiso? But I knew coming in their numbers offensively were really good, and their first 4 or 5 hitters were as good as we've seen this year, of just really swing playing and short swings. And I'm not sitting here saying knock it out of the park, but just extending at bats and not striking out and really being very competitive. And that's what allowed them to jump out both those games 2-0. There was that top of that lineup.
You had 20 combined innings pitched from your starters. And I was talking to a friend about this over the weekend, that it seems like starters aren't going as deep into ball games around the country. Maybe that's just an incorrect observation, but your team, not the case. How did that longevity happen this weekend, especially Saturday and Sunday? Really efficient 7 complete innings from both guys.
Yeah, I'll tell you, Tanner Hall, who's our Friday night guy, which everybody's familiar with, he ran pitch totals up to 32 after the first inning. And, that's not what you want, certainly, out of your Friday night starter, because the last thing you want to do is have to get in that bullpen very much on Friday and expose it with 2 games left to play. But, he was able to, after he gave up the 2 runs, he was able to cover 5 shutout innings after that, only on 5 walks and 5 strikeouts and 2 walks. But, he gave us a chance, and for forever, that game was sitting there at 2-1. We scored 1 in the third, but it was a grand slam in the 7th by them that really made the difference. And it was our bullpen piece that came in and struggled a little bit, had a couple of walks and hit batter, and kind of self-inflicted the situation. And their 4-hole hitter, he got a pitch and he didn't miss it, and that was the difference in losing 6-1 on Friday. But we have been able to go deep with our starters into the game. Matty Adams, our Saturday starter, he covered 7 innings. Nico Mazza yesterday covered 7 innings. So we kind of need that a little bit. We need our starters to go a little bit deeper, because our bullpen is just not as deep as it was certainly last year with arguably the best staff that I've ever been a part of.
Coach, looking at your numbers for walks, they're just up over last year, and that's not a Southern Miss thing. That's happening all over college baseball. We're certainly seeing it up here in Starkville at Mississippi State. Now that you've had a few weeks to assess things, we talk about the rule changes with the pitch clock and how strictly they're following that. Do you think that's playing a role in why there are just more walks in college baseball this year?
Well, I do. Maybe that's playing a little bit. I think the zones are tighter, in all honesty, with the track man that's out there and the things that the assigners are wanting to be reported back with the grades on umpires, that these TrackMan and services like them that are able to generate those umpire reports. Certainly, those guys don't want to be calling things off the plate. Their zones are a little bit tighter, and I'm not saying it's all their fault, but I think they know that they're being graded on it, and And certainly we're not Major League Baseball pitchers at our level, so it gets a little frustrating sometimes on those balls that I feel like historically have been called strikes. And it's not just for us; it's the opponent. You see it both ways, but I think that's maybe what has tended or trended the walks to be a little bit higher, as you say, across the country.
You've played almost all the start of the season in the friendly confines at Pete Taylor. Now you're about to go on a 5-game roads trip with a trip to Texas State to start Sun Belt play. Is your team ready to go out on the road? And what changes for you this week versus last week when you have home games?
I don't think anything. Honestly, Brian, what we like to do is we like to play out of the 4 non-conference series to start the season. We normally like to play one of those on the road to just create that routine that we're going to have when we start conference. Not knowing at the time when we make these non-conference series if we're going to be at home for the first weekend of conference or on the road. But this year we are on the road at Texas State, like you said. But, I had to go with 4 weekends at home this year just because I lost the ability to schedule midweek games with some of these teams that are in the Sun Belt with us are no longer my teams that I can schedule for midweek, nor are we for them. And those teams being South Alabama, Monroe, Troy, Lafayette, those were all midweek opponents that I lost. So in order to build up that home schedule and get the amount of games that we like to have, which is 30 at home, I had to play those first 4 weekends. So, whether we're ready or not, whether we've been in a routine or not, here it comes, and we have to be ready and face the challenge.
Scott Berry joining us on the Farm Bureau guest line. Coach, you mentioned, even though you have some familiarity there, the new conference schedule, do you find that you might be at some level of disadvantage knowing that these are a bunch of teams that you haven't been able to scout over the years and develop a familiarity with? Being in the new conference, does that set you guys back at all as you enter conference play?
No, because I think the other side of that, you could say they are experiencing the same thing. There are venues, particularly this weekend that we visit in San Marcos, Texas State. I've never been there. I don't know anything about it. I've kind of followed them over the years a little bit. Last year they were a very good club that probably should have hosted, or I know they were in contention to host. A very good baseball program. And, Coastal Carolina, I've never been to that place, Georgia Southern. So, there's a lot of new places that we'll visit, and they'll have to visit us on the other year as well. So I think it kind of evens itself out as you go through it.
Got about a minute and a half left with you. We ask you often, what did you learn about your team this weekend? Let's flip that script a little bit. Is there something that you're still wanting to learn about your team that you don't know yet as you enter conference play?
Well, I think this team is a work in progress, in all honesty. We're 10-5 right now with 1 game left to go in what I call the first season. That's the non-conference part of the schedule before we hit the conference schedule, which starts on Friday. So, right now I'm still striving for consistency in all areas that we play. I think the one thing that has shown up pretty well is defense. I think, we haven't our worst enemy as far as that goes. I think we've made good decisions on the field and what we do defensively, that we're not beating ourselves. So, being able to get the bullpen consistent is still a work in progress, as is our offense in at all as a whole. Sometimes we hit in the top of the order, sometimes we hit in the bottom of the order. Obviously, we all strive to hit all the way through the order. But, our guys that have been around this league, those are the guys that we're counting on and need them to really start stepping up.
Coach, we appreciate it so much. Congrats on the series win, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Thank you, guys.
That's Scott Berry, Southern Miss head coach, joining us on the Farm Bureau guest line. Check out favorites.com and go with the